Shazam! Fury of the Gods came out this past weekend. I have a review up on the channel. This isn't going to be a review of the movie, so if you want to hear my full thoughts, you can check there. Basically, it flopped. Not basically. It did flop. It did bad. Opening weekend, it made $30 million domestically. For reference, the first film, Shazam, which, with sequels, you want to see trajectory go up. The first film made $53 million opening weekend. And Shazam! Fury of the Gods made $30 million. So, that has left a lot of people, rightfully so, asking the question, why? Why did Shazam! Fury of the Gods flop when it opened? People liked it. It's getting decent buzz online. People say it's a good movie. Why did this DC... People liked the first one, Shazam, 53 million opening weekend. It has like a 90 Rotten Tomatoes score. It's high in the audience score. Why did Shazam! Fury of the Gods flop? Why didn't it work? And people are going into all these things of, oh, well, Dwayne Johnson meddled with the movie. He wanted all the Black Adam connections taken out of the movie, and now people are blaming Dwayne Johnson for it. People are blaming Ant-Man and the Wasp because Ant-Man and the Wasp was such a poor movie in some people's eyes that they didn't want to go see the next comic book movie. Which let's just address that there is not one right answer to the reason why Shazam! Fury of the Gods flopped, why it only made $30 million opening weekend, why it was a 45% drop from the previous film's opening weekend number. But here's what I will say to Shazam! Fury of the Gods bombing. People haven't really been addressing just how much the general audience have fallen off the DCEU train. These DC movies have been in decline for a long time now, and people are speaking with their wallets. They don't like this franchise anymore. And don't take it from me. Take it from the numbers. Let's go through the DCEU's box office history for a second, right? So we get Man of Steel in 2013. Now, I'm not comparing the DCEU to Marvel. This is not what this is about. This is just for a little bit of context, but I get that this is not an apples to apples comparison, okay? So, Man of Steel. Let's look at Iron Man. Iron Man kicked off the MCU. He was definitely a lesser-known character by the time he came out than Superman was when Man of Steel came out. Iron Man, kicking off the MCU, opened to $98,618,668 to go on to make $585,796,247 worldwide. The first movie to kick off the DCEU with Man of Steel, opening weekend, made $116 million, which is rightfully so. It definitely should have beaten Iron Man's opening weekend to kick off the universe. He's a much better known character. And worldwide, Man of Steel went on to make $668 million. Move on to the next movie in the set of the DCEU. We had Batman vs. Superman, which went up in box office, kind of a semi-sequel to Man of Steel. Opening weekend made $166 million. Worldwide, it made $873 million, which... for a Batman versus Superman movie, a movie starring Superman and Batman, I'm sure the studio wanted $1 billion, but $873 million is still a very respectful number. They should be very happy about that. So, Batman vs. Superman makes $166 million. We go on to Suicide Squad, which Suicide Squad was a movie that not very many people liked. But it had an amazing trailer. It was my introduction to Bohemian Rhapsody. I love that trailer. But it made $133 million opening weekend. Worldwide, it went on to make $746 million. Now, for a movie that was very poorly critically reviewed, not too many people liked it, wasn't starring very big superhero names. Harley Quinn was probably the biggest name in there, but even she was a small name. $133 million opening weekend and $746 million worldwide by the end of the run. That's a great result. So, we go on from Suicide Squad, and we move on to Wonder Woman came out. She was introduced in Batman vs. Superman. Opening weekend made $103 million. Worldwide, made $822 million. And guys, enjoy seeing that opening $103 million, because this is the last DCEU movie that made $100 million opening weekend. Wrap your head around that. Wonder Woman came out when? 2017, I want to say. Wonder Woman came out 2017. It is the last movie that we're going to look at that made 100 million opening weekend. We go forward. All right. Moving on. We've got, next up, Justice League. Justice League comes out, and this was supposed to be the big build-up to DC's Avengers-type movie, bringing Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Flash, Cyborg, all these characters together. Opening weekend made $93 million. Worldwide, it made $657 million for a movie called Justice League, starring all these A-list heroes. That's a bad result. It's not terrible, $657 million. But you want $1 billion. You want $1 billion on that movie. It did not work out. And then, guys, it just dwindles. Now, this is a little bit of a asterisk to this. Well, not asterisk, but this is the odd one out. Because Aquaman came out after Justice League. And, again, opening weekend went down. Made $67 million opening weekend. But worldwide, it went on to make $1 billion. The only DCEU movie to make $1 billion was Aquaman. Now, 800 million of that came from international, so I guess people just love Aquaman overseas, but Aquaman was the last and only DCEU movie to make $1 billion. And guys, it does not get better from here, because after Aquaman, we got our first Shazam. Opening weekend, $53 million. Worldwide, $366 million. Now, Shazam was a lesser-known character around this time, so an opening for $53 million, and it had a much more modest budget. Opening at $53 million is really not that bad, to be honest, on the movie's budget. However, when you look at the this is a universe that's supposed to be building off of itself, and you keep seeing the opening weekend numbers declining. At this point, the reference that I could find to this type of movie was Ant-Man in the MCU. A lesser-known character, not very many people knew who Ant-Man was. That movie still made like $90 million opening weekend. All right, moving on. So we got Shazam here, the first one, at $53 million. And then Birds of Prey came out, and it made opening weekend $33 million. Worldwide, it made $205 million. And before you go on and say the pandemic affected this movie, I know sometimes our memories are weird. That's how I remembered it. I'm like, oh yeah, the pandemic. I looked at the release date. The movie came out February 7th, 2020, a month before the pandemic hit. The theaters were still hot. People were still going to the theaters. The comic book movie genre was like at its peak at this point. Birds of Prey with Harley Quinn, which some people said was the best part of that Suicide Squad movie, $33 million opening weekend, $205 million worldwide. All right, moving on to the next movie, and these movies get big asterisks next to them, big asterisks, because these movies came out during the pandemic, and it was day and date release. So Wonder Woman 1984, which I personally think is the worst of the DCEU movies, when it came out, it opened to $16 million. Worldwide, it made $169 million. Now, like I said, big asterisks on that one. Peak of the pandemic, day and date release on HBO Max, as well as theaters. A lot of people couldn't go to see this, watched it for free on HBO Max. Big asterisks. We'll never actually know how much that movie would have made. Also, some big asterisks. The Suicide Squad was next. It opened to $26,205,415. Worldwide, it made $168 million. Again, big asterisks. Little bit less than Wonder Woman 1984, though, because it was day and date release, but the theaters, I feel like, were more accessible around this time. But it was still in the middle of the pandemic. So we'll actually never know how much James Gunn's Suicide Squad would have made if the world was normal, but I digress. So this one, however, though, we've talked about for months. There's no asterisks on this one. Black Adam, $67 million on opening weekend. Worldwide, it made $392 million. Depending on who you asked, it lost money. All right. So $67 million opening weekend. If we go to the last movie before the pandemic that opened, Birds of Prey, it made $33 million. This is an increase from Birds of Prey's opening weekend, but you also got to remember Black Adam has Dwayne Johnson, big movie star. He was heavily promoting, even though he wouldn't say the name, we all know who he was talking about, that Superman was going to be in this movie. I'm sure that boosted a lot of the opening weekend, because with these superhero movies, they're very front-ended. People that really want to see them come out to see them in droves the first weekend. I'm sure that helped Black Adam a lot with its numbers. But it all leads us to Shazam! Fury of the Gods, which opened at $30 million worldwide. Is, TBD, because the movie's still in theaters. All of this, guys, to point out, the DC movies have been in decline. Their box office numbers have been in decline for like 5 to 6 years now. It just took time to get to the point where we got a movie like Shazam! Fury of the Gods that flops opening weekend. Now, I'm not saying that it's because of, it's just any movie would have flopped, and it's not specifically for Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Yeah, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, it didn't have the greatest marketing. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff besides just this that goes into why did this movie flop. But I really do think people are overlooking that people speak with their audiences, vote with their wallets. And they've been voting with their wallets slowly over time on the DCEU. They are losing interest, and it shows in the box office numbers. And you can't dispute the numbers. And I really think they need to just reset. I think the numbers of the box office, when you go and look at this, they started pretty good. I mean, Man of Steel at $116 million is pretty good for an opening for your cinematic universe. And then to increase to $166 million, but then you just start going down. And your last movie to open to $100 million was Wonder Woman in 2017. The DCEU is not working. The current iteration of it needs to go. Don't keep Peacemaker. Don't keep Shazam. Don't keep Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman. Start with Superman 2025. I know The Flash is supposed to reset the DCEU and go into the new DCEU. Don't connect at all to The Flash. Burn it. Bury it in the backyard, get rid of it all. And I'm not saying that The Flash is going to bomb, just so you guys know. I do actually think that The Flash is going to do very well. What I'm most interested to see is Blue Beetle. And Aquaman, I think, will still do well internationally overseas, but I'm very interested to see how something like Blue Beetle does with the audience. But as it is right now, yeah, I think it's time to box this DCEU up completely and start from scratch. What do you guys think of this? What do you guys think of the box office numbers? Do you think there's any legitimacy to seeing these numbers go down? Do you think people are losing interest in the DCEU? Or do you think the DCEU is fine? It was just other problems with Shazam that people didn't go to support the movie. Comment down below. Let me know all your thoughts and opinions on this, guys. And without further ado, let's take a look at what you guys are saying about this.